the reason why we wanted to make sure that we brought them on is they're experts, if you will, in cybersecurity and really what we want to bring to you guys as far as what best practices are. So I would love both of them just to say hi, introduce themselves a little bit. If you anything else interesting that we should know about you guys, where are you coming from? Because I know you guys both have way better backgrounds than I do. So Paul, if you can just introduce yourself a little bit, that'd be great.
Paul, I think you're on mute.
Somehow we got unplugged.
I think that's that was the official saying of 2020, but apparently I'm bringing it into 2021. So thank you, Jonathan. So Paul Ewing here, working at Schwab for about 13 and a half years. As technology consultants, both Jonathan and I, we work with advisors, helping them with a number of technology related topics. Cybersecurity is one that we spend a great deal of time with advisors, and we're happy to be here. I'm broadcasting from my home in Minneapolis, and it's great to be here.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Jonathan, if you can also do the same, that would be great.
Sure. So Jonathan Wojtkun, I've been on the Schwab Technology Consulting team for 7 years now, coming at you live from New Hampshire. And Paul and I just love doing these. It's a great opportunity for us to be remote and still interact with you and the advisors we support. So happy to be here.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you guys taking the time. As I got a comment from one of the attendees on this, I'm having some fun internet issues. So I'm going to ask a question, and then if I cut out, just run with it. That would be great. So what I want to do is, as we said, I mean, cybersecurity is talked about a lot. We are all working from home now, or at least a lot of us are. And so what I want to do was touch first on when we look at cybersecurity in general, just the generality of safe computing, protecting against sensitive loss of information and things like that. Can you guys give us we hear about encryption. So give me the breakdown of what should be encrypted, and really what does that even mean? And Paul, if you can kick off with that question, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Nicholas. So when we refer to encryption, think of encryption as data being protected in a common way, scrambled way, and that encryption can only be unlocked if you have the key. So a lot of times that key is a password. It could be some technical controls that run behind the scenes. We see that with larger organizations or firms where they are only passing that information if both sides have the key and it is unlocking the information. We talk a lot about encryption as it relates to our PCs, our laptops, our phones. There are mechanisms and ways to encrypt those devices. We talk a lot about Bitlocker, which is a product that can be added, or is if you're running a current version of Windows, that's something that you can enable. And what Bitlocker does is it provides this encryption on the disk drive itself. So if your computer gets stolen, or if you have a laptop that goes missing, if that user who steals your device, they don't have the key, they can unlock the data. So it's a great way to protect what we call data at rest. So data that's just stored.
Gotcha. So similar to when we look at it, and one of the questions we get a lot is when that information is going away. So that's at rest, that's sitting in your phone, in your computer. And I think on the Mac version, we're fortunate, we work with Mac, at least a lot of our advisors do, and they have the whole disk encryption. Is that similar to what you're talking on the Bitlocker side of things, Paul?
That's exactly, yeah. Okay. Jonathan is going to have to keep me honest on the Mac version of that, but yeah, the Bitlocker is the PC.
All right.
Yeah, I'm the Android guy in the group. So, really, I think when we talk about encryption, the good idea is if you lose a device, how comfortable are you with someone you don't want having that device actually having it? So your telephone, your phones, your laptops. Encryption is basically baked into any operating software that you have now at this point. So it's a good question just to ask how to turn it on. If you've got the thumbprint or the face scan, that's a great opportunity to say, hey, no one else can get into that device without being me. So I feel comfortable if I accidentally leave it on a plane or if someone takes it out of my car. It doesn't matter because they're not me. They don't have something that I am. And so they can't get into the thing that I just lost. So that's kind of how I think about encryption is if I lost this or if someone else got it, am I nervous about it or not?
Okay. No, that's helpful. And Jonathan, when you guys look at encryption and as we're talking about these things, just so everyone on the webinar and here knows, there is a Q&A section. There's also a raise a hand. If you have any questions, please use those. I am going to be looking at those. So if I look off to this direction, that's the Q&A window, if you will, that I'm looking at to make sure we answer them. So please use those. But Jonathan, when you look at encryption, so that we talked about at rest, one of the questions a lot, and frankly, this isn't happening as often as it was, call it 18 months ago, the public Wi-Fi networks that we used to all stop in to grab a Starbucks, have a quick, chat with somebody.
Sure.
I mean, should we all join them, or is there the downside of those? I mean, give me the rundown on how safe those really are.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we're of the mindset if it's a public Wi-Fi device, just don't use it. Now there are some caveats there, but really the thing is, if it's a public device, even if you recognize it, if it says Starbucks Wi-Fi or if it says McDonald's Wi-Fi or something in that regard, it doesn't actually mean that Starbucks or McDonald's is controlling that device. I can name a device Starbucks Wi-Fi and you'll connect to it, and now I'm part of your phone and you don't even realize that. The other thing we see out there is there are bad perpetrators out there who can actually mimic your home network. So if you have your cell phone and the Wi-Fi is always on, even when you leave the house, there's a device that I could control that says, hey, I am that home network. Go ahead and talk to me and I'm fine. So we just talked about good hygiene. Turn your Wi-Fi off when you're in a place that you don't trust or when you leave the house. And then the last thing I would say is, I've been overseas, cell networks don't work. Certainly I need to look something up so I can be on the Wi-Fi and that's fine. But this is when we talk about a VPN or virtual private network. So if you've got antivirus device, a lot of them are baking these into their devices. You can do a quick Google search. I like CNET or PC Mag. They generally rate the top 5 or 10. If I need public Wi-Fi and I have no other means, then I'll just go ahead and I'll turn on my VPN. And we're going back to encryption now, but that is now encrypting the data I'm sending back and forth to my device.
Okay, perfect. And a follow-up question that we got from somebody was, public Wi-Fi, is that the same thing about like a hotel Wi-Fi? You sign in, they give you your own Wi-Fi to log in. It's your room number and some random digit. Like, is that safer or still not a good idea?
Yeah,
I'm gonna go to you, Paul, on this one. We're gonna ping pong here.
Yeah, still not safe. Still
Okay.
considered public. Basically, anything that you don't control the device that's broadcasting that Wi-Fi connection would be considered a public, public domain or public hotspot. So, the airports, hotels, when we were able to do that
Yeah.
and go there, those are considered, public. And I'll pile on Jonathan's comments there. The VPN is one way that you can protect that communication. So if you do have to use public Wi-Fi, using a VPN, a virtual private network, will encrypt the connection between those between the internet connection there, and you can pass that data safely back and forth.
Okay.
And just to add that too, because I know we're all doom and gloom, and so we make people nervous every now and again. But your cell phone can be a hotspot. So cellular networks are very secure. I feel very comfortable banking or doing whatever through my cellular connection. So if I need to check my email, if I'm on the road, I'll just connect to my phone as a Wi-Fi hotspot. I am burning data. I know that costs a little bit of money if you're not on an unlimited plan, but that is much better than any sort of public Wi-Fi.
Great point. And that's something we use a lot. And I think the VPN we've been using probably, before COVID, and we were actually out on these public Wi-Fis when we had to be. They were very key. So, and one follow-up question to what you were talking about earlier, Paul, we got from a question from somebody talking about Bitlocker. Can you explain the difference of the password to unlock their Windows device and Bitlocker? What are the two differences there on this encryption versus just a password protection?
Yeah, essentially there is a password for Bitlocker, and I'll tell you, I was having some trouble with my work machine a few months back, and every time I would log in, I was presented with the Bitlocker code, and it's I think like 32 character or 48 character combination that I had to plug in, and then that allowed me to be able to log in to my device. So the username and password is sort of the front door, but if you're the bad actor does not have your username and password, there are other ways to sort of backdoor into that disk drive, and that's where Bitlocker is going to be able to protect the data that's behind that wall.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that makes sense. It's that extra protection even before you get to the Windows login, because you can't even enter the quote unquote enter the door to get there unless you have that Bitlocker on it.
Great.
Okay, perfect. We get some great questions here, so I'm gonna ping pong back to VPNs. I think you'd mentioned CNET, was that Jonathan, when you were talking about VPNs, or am I flipping two things you were talking about there? Can you just give
No, that's great.
with any recommendations?
Yeah, so not to make a joke, but my mom's 75 and I always tell her to Google things when she's doing some research. So, VPNs are great. Obviously, there's going to be people who create a fake VPN on the Apple Store or the Android Store. So I just want to look at trusted sources. They're always changing. There are new ones that are always coming out. So industry resources like PCMag.com, CNET.com, they're trusted sources of information where they're going to lead me to good opportunities. So, I'll Google VPNs. I probably do it about once a year just to see if there's something else I want to look at, or maybe there's one that's a little bit easier or cheaper. But those are trusted resources where I know when they list the top 5 or 10, those are the good 5 or 10 for me to look at, and I don't need to go and try to find it myself.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, and I would say plan to pay for it. There are free versions out there. I would rather spend a couple dollars a month and have a pay version that I know is being supported and updated, and we're passing sensitive data back and forth through these networks. So paying a few dollars a month, I think is great peace of mind for myself.
Perfect. No, I agree. So in transitioning from, and yes, a lot of what we're going to talk about, I like how you put that, Paul. I think you said that is doom and gloom, or Jonathan, one of you said, hey, we're doom and gloomers. We're going to talk about the bad stuff, but we're going to continue down this thread. So this isn't to scare everybody. This is just talking about how to protect yourself and then things you should know. And one of them, again, we're talking about data that's in our devices, but transitioning that on the security side to when we're sending information out. So we've talked about Wi-Fi. What about email? Like, what is the best practices? We've unfortunately had some clients get duped in email and had some issues there. And so we've had the receiving call of that email that came from me requesting money, specifically with what we do for our clients, is not accurate. And we've fortunately been able to stop money transfers that were requested because we have a lot of system in place and checks and balances. But talk to me about how we can better protect ourselves. And I think, Jonathan, you answered the last one, so I'm going to you, Paul, for this question.
All right. Yeah. One of our colleagues refers to email as that it is the worst enemy to any business or any industry, really. So I like to say all bad things come through email. And Nicholas, you're referring to a very popular attack vector known as phishing. So typically what is hitting your inbox is an email that it may look like it's from a known source. It may look like it's from a bank that you do banking from. It may actually look like a person that you know, and within that email will likely be a link that is going to send you to a malicious site or send you to a site that looks like another site, or it could include an attachment that if you open that attachment or download that attachment, it may install malicious software on your devices. or on your machine. So email is, public enemy number one. And the best thing that you can do is really just pay really close attention to that inbox and really be suspect of everything that is in your inbox, because it's the easiest way for the bad guys to gain access to your credentials, to information. And, these guys are lazy. This is easy for them to do. It's easy for them to blast out an email. And the reason they keep doing it is because people fall victim to it every single day. And probably that's the number one source of fraud that we see at Schwab is an email account that's been taken over, and the fraudster, will either sit in that email box and comb through it and collect a whole bunch of information, and then pose as you requesting money from your advisor. And again, Nicholas says we have protocols and questions that are asked, and we have these stopgaps put in place. But it really starts with you having really good hygiene with your email.
Yeah, no, that's true. And when you guys talk about those things, Jonathan, when you guys look at the phishing attempts, ones that we've seen, even our own network of emails that I get all the time, from colleagues of mine that have literally their exact footer in there.
Right.
It looks identical. The language is a little bit different. Like, so is that the most common way of looking at it? And then what's a way for somebody, rather than have to literally comb everyone, like, are there some tricks to being able to figure out that it's not really that person, or some tells, if you will?
So there are some tells, and when we look at tells and we're looking at those spoofed emails, so I'm creating an email address that looks similar to something that you might send out, and I'm going to send it to a contact I know you have. That's where I'm going to try to talk as much as I can like you in order to fool this person in order to respond to this email. What we're seeing and some of the problems are, and especially if you haven't changed your email password in a while, it's common behavior for cyber criminals once they get your username and your password, through hacking attempts, through other breaches, if you share that password across multiple sites, whatever, they'll actually just camp in your email and they'll read your emails. So this will happen over 9, 12, 24 months, and they'll understand what's happening in your life. So now it's not the fact that, hey, this is coming from a copied email address. When I respond to you, I am responding as that person. Perfect example. So I refinanced last year. For anyone who's refinanced or done a mortgage, you give them basically a 2-year history of your entire financial overview, right? So they can understand what the price points are, they can fill out the paperwork. And just like you are susceptible, so are any sort of vendors that you leverage. So my mortgage company sent me a link. They said, hey, upload all your stuff to the portal. Speak in my language. This is something I want to hear. They send me a link and no username, no password. And they just say, hey, start uploading your files. But there's no way for me to know that mortgage company was not also breached, and that wasn't coming from a bad actor. And the easiest thing that I did was call and say, did you send this email? I'm about to start uploading some things. Just verify that you see that I'm the one doing it and it's coming on your systems. So there are always tricks. We always say trust but verify. So if you see an email that you need to act upon, or if it's threatening in any manner, if it's trying to raise your blood pressure a bit, they feed on emotion, just call. Don't respond by email. They might write you back. They're waiting for you to respond via email. Call, FaceTime, reach out some other way, and just verify that that person on the other end is the person you think it is.
Perfect. No, that is one of the simplest but easiest ways of doing it. Just to, hey, pick up the phone and talk. Yep. One question we got through, or it's kind of two questions in one. Somebody asked, what is it better to use Proton Mail? And so, Paul, I'm going to go to you. If you know what this individual is talking about, I've not heard about that. So I'd love to, if you don't, we'll go to Jonathan and hope he does.
I haven't, and maybe Jonathan.
Okay. Jonathan, we're relying on you here. If not, I'll look it up.
He might be Googling it right now.
I'm Googling it right now, actually. Yeah.
All right. We'll circle back. Jonathan will do some Googling and we'll circle back to that. And I'll follow up. I know who asked that question, so I'll follow up with you. We'll pivot this and talk about that in a second. The last one on email while we're on this is again sending out, sending outward. So similar to what you're doing, Jonathan, on this upload of a portal. One of the things that we get all the time is we get emails from clients, hey, here is X. And it's a very sensitive statement. There's other ways of getting it to us that we'll talk about and we like. But what is the harm of getting that out there when you're sending it to me? You know me, you know you're sending it to me. Like, what happens from the point you send it to getting to me? What can somebody do in that instance?
Yeah,
And
you
then,
can
sorry,
think
Jonathan, I thought
of
you were looking at stuff. So Paul, I was going to you on that.
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, think of email as a postcard. It was never designed to be a secure communication channel. So you sending something over the wire, we can't confirm that the recipient is receiving that email, and so inherently it's not secure. So if you're not comfortable writing your social security number on a postcard and dropping it in the mailbox, you shouldn't be doing that over email. And so, I think that's probably, Nicholas, something that you guys receive all the time. Like you said, sensitive documents, things that have sensitive information in it. Even though you are sending it to your trusted advisor, it could be intercepted, and then ultimately it's going to sit in your sent box in your email. So bad actor gets in your email box. Here they're not just looking in your inbox, they're searching every folder for anything sensitive, and there's a copy of that document sitting there. So we recommend secure channels of delivering that information. We're big fans of portals. So essentially a destination where you can upload a document, and Nicholas can come in and grab that document and download it into their system. All of that passing of the uploading and downloading of the document is encrypted, and you're taking the email component out of it. You may receive an email that says, hey, there's a document here. You can go and retrieve it, but you're going to need a username and a password, and credentials that authenticate yourself before you gain access to that information.
And just to throw a little bit more on there, because I'm sure we're going to talk about passwords, and I think that's where Proton Mail is going to come in.
Yep,
Love
that's
it.
where we're coming next.
But just going back to when I was in college, email is going to move the fastest route possible. And the thing that people don't think about is the fastest route possible from myself in New Hampshire to Paul in Minnesota is through Alaska or through someplace else. And so if it's unsecured and going through a bunch of different computers as fast as possible to get to Paul, along any of those computers, someone could be listening in. And so that's, if it's unencrypted, and we talked a little bit about setting things encrypted, that's a lot of opportunities for people to grab that and read it without either one of us knowing. And so that's why we really emphasize email unsecured is just, it's a postcard, and just assume everyone can see what you're writing.
Perfect. No, that makes sense. And so you kicked it right where I'm heading next, which is on the password side, Jonathan. When you guys think about passwords, that, we have way too many. I'll start there before we start going down this thread. Explain the multi-factor and two-factor, because I know Schwab uses that. And so that's one of the big things that we've seen has been beneficial to make sure that we're not letting bad actors in, if you will. But tell everybody just kind of what it is, how to make sure, and what Schwab does, frankly, so that, a lot of clients on here have accounts with you guys. Tell me how that looks.
Yeah, and I'm going to kick it to Paul to talk about password managers, because we're big proponents of that as well. So passwords are the easiest way for people to get into your system. And there came out a long time ago, the more complex password you have, no matter how many characters it is, it's very impossible for anyone to guess what that password could be. The leaps in computing, 10-character password can be guessed in a few minutes now at this point if someone's trying hard enough. And so there's two different ways to go about this. Length trumps complexity. So if you have a 30-character password, we're talking hundreds of years for someone to try that. The better opportunity is multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication is simply something you know in your head, like the password you've memorized, and something you have, like your cell phone, a thumbprint, something in that regard. And what we're going to do is we're going to combine those two technologies, because it's very difficult to get both of those at the same time. So Schwab is a perfect example. We have multi-factor authentication. It's through VIP, and it's a 6-digit code, and it changes every 30 seconds. But for me to get into Schwab Alliance, I need my password and that 6-digit code that is only on my cell device for 30 seconds. So very difficult for a bad actor to have both my password and my cell phone at the exact same time. The other benefit here too is as I'm adding those 6 characters, I'm extending the length of my password, which we know is also secure. And then what I would say there too is, we use the VIP at Schwab. My bank also uses VIP. So however many times you can use this technology on other websites that are sensitive to you, financial, investment, whatever, it's just a great opportunity to beef up your security with a very easy tool.
Yep. No, that's perfect. And one of the transitions, so part of the question to me comes in, that's how we get in to make sure that we're allowed to get into the Schwab Alliance side of things. Walk the client side. So on the clients coming in for, accounts that they don't have that are with Schwab or other accounts, like what should they be looking at? Can you always get a text, a text message to it? Can you always get a second, email? Like what are some of the best things that you guys have seen out there, and how does that work? And Paul, I'll go to you since Jonathan gave me that last answer.
Yeah, so this is where we refer to it as multi-factor, right? So it could be, a thumbprint, it could be a Face ID, it could be a text, right? So using your phone as a second authentication method. There's also programs or websites that will remember the cookie, essentially, that's associated with your device. So if it's recognizing your login, but it doesn't match with the last device that you logged in with, it's going to prompt more questions. And so, I think some folks don't want to use multi-factor authentication because they think they're gonna, it's a hassle, or I'm gonna have to do it every single time. Most of them will only prompt you if there is a device change. So, I dealt with this last year. I got a new phone. And like anytime I went in for the first time on any of these sensitive sites, they're going to ask me for more questions. And so that the phone and the text are a good way to do it. Sometimes it's an email, or maybe it's you select the phone number that you want, that they have on record for you, and they follow up that way. So, and I'll pile on what Jonathan was saying. Obviously, financial sites, your Schwab account, any social media applications that you're using, any of your personal email, they all have two-factor or multi-factor capabilities. It's so easy to turn it on, and it's just providing that extra layer of protection. And I know we're running out of time here, and I just want to go straight into password managers.
I was going to go there, so I appreciate you just run.
All right.
Go.
Yeah, good. So we are huge fans of password managers, and this is technology that allows you to manage multiple passwords. So Nicholas, you said you have a lot of passwords. I don't know if this is a humble brag or not, but I've got over 300.
No, it's just stupid.
300
yeah,
passwords.
You got way too many.
Yeah, I know. I got to do some cleanup there, but the password manager remembers my username and my password for all of my sites. Ideally, I would have a unique individual password for every single one of those sites. I don't need to worry about remembering them because they're going to be long, and sometimes they'll be complex. But what I do need to remember is my master password. So that I remember, that I use as a sentence. It's like 36 characters long. And anytime that I need to gain access to a password, I just use my password manager to reveal it for me. And I'll just give you a couple of names that are really popular.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Ones that we use. So LastPass is probably the one we see most often. LASTPASS. I personally use a program called 1Password, so it's the number 1 password. I've used Dashlane as another provider as well. So those are probably the big 3 that are out there. Plan to pay for it. I chose 1Password because it allows me to permission my family members, because I'm trying to create this habit of complex passwords. Well, here we have some technology to help support that. So 1Password has a really nice family plan. And that's actually why I switched from Dashlane to 1Password. But if you're not using a password manager, you should plan to start.
Yeah, no, I think, and I'll jump on that bandwagon too. I'm not going to humble brag how many, because I don't even know, but one is way too many, that we have. And two, the nice thing with those password ones, we were, as I'm sure we all are, we kind of cycle through 5 or 6 passwords that we use consistently. And
Yeah.
I get, we get the email from LifeLock telling me your password is out there, you need to go change it. And so we started looking at it, and it's nice because it has that little generate new password button. It's the randomest number of characters. It's everything that's allowed on there, and you don't have to think about it. And then it's stored on everything. The one downside, and this is my, my little pet peeve, is when my kids need to log into Netflix on a new device, I got to get them some random weird digits that they can't figure out. But
yeah,
that's not a problem that we'll address tonight. So I know we're over time, so I appreciate everyone sticking with us. I'm going to ask just one more question, because again, we as financial stewards for our clients, I just want to touch on this one, which is the fraud side of things on requests for money. We talked about it on getting emails and encryption. Can you guys talk about what Schwab sees as far as how money is how fraud is happening inside of these accounts? And
Yeah,
sorry, I'm going to go Jonathan. Paul, you talked a lot, so we're skipping you now.
All
right.
We could talk about this for the next 3 hours, so I'm trying to find the best way to
give me the bridge version.
Yeah. So there's a lot of opportunities. I would say the most common is, again, if someone's email is compromised, a request coming from a client who's not actually a client requesting money. And then what happens is they'll tack on the fact that they know you have a relationship because they're in your email and they see that correspondence with the fact that you have bank accounts. Now, the interesting part here is if you share passwords, now we're going back to passwords. If I know your email address and your password for Hotmail or Gmail, I'm going to assume, and probably correctly so, a majority of the time, that it's similar or the same for Schwab.com, bankofamerica.com, whatever these are. So now I can get in, and now I have control over much more sensitive information than just your email.
Yep.
Again, phone call is the best way to prevent that. So when there's a money request, when we see that coming through email, that simple phone call and our ability to talk to you, 85% of the time, fraud is wiped out immediately. It's just a very simple solution. The other thing to consider, and this is why LifeLock is a great thing, or freezing your credit is another opportunity, but just consider all the breaches that are already out there. I've been a part of a few dozen myself at this point. I generally assume my name and my social security number are public information at this point, unfortunately. So there might be someone who decides to create an account in my name. And LifeLock is always looking for that, or some of these other monitoring systems. I've frozen my credit, so no new accounts can open unless I unlock those. And that's where someone might still have all of that information, but as soon as they try to harm me from a financial perspective, I'm going to get pinged or they're going to hit a brick wall. So if anything just seems strange, always reach out to your financial advisor. They're the front line of defense. You guys do a great job of staying up to date with the latest and greatest threats that are out there. If anything just seems amiss, that's a perfect opportunity to call and reach out and just to make sure that things are okay.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, Jonathan. And for all of you guys tuning in, we have been on the receiving end of a few of those phone calls, and honestly, we are actually proactively reaching out to you guys on anytime that we see something just a little bit different, whether it's, hey, they never request money and now they are, or what have you. So we're not calling to harass you and frustrate you. We're calling to try and protect you on that stuff. And as we're talking to the doom and gloomers of what people try and steal, you know why. So I really appreciate it. I know we have, I'm sure we could talk for another hour or so, but we wanted to keep this kind of short and sweet and what everyone at home can be looking at. So I appreciate everyone taking the time today. Paul, Jonathan, thank you guys very much for joining us and giving your expertise. We really appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Thanks for having us.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your night. Take care.
Thank you.